The night is dark and full of terrors on Game of Thrones, but nothing is darker and more terrifying than the Night's King. Little is known about the leader of the White Walkers, if that even is what he is, but what we do know makes him seem pretty important. You might not know the Night's King by name, but he's a hard Game of Thrones character to forget. White Walkers have been a presence in the show since the opening scene of the pilot, but it wasn't until season 4 that fans got their first look at White Walker society. These creatures might be a threat to Westeros, but they don't seem to be savages. It's unclear how many of them there are, but we've seen at least 13. After Bran saw him in a vision, the Night's King was introduced on Game of Thrones when he turned a baby into a White Walker. This proved that not only does he have magical powers, but he also has the ability to turn humans into his kind. The Night's King returned again in Game of Thrones Season 5. When Jon Snow and the Night's Watch headed to Hardhome to save the wildlings trapped there, the Night's King and his White Walkers crew showed up with their undead army to kill as many people as they could. Both Jon and viewers learned the extent of the White Walker threat when the Night's King reanimated all the wildlings that died at Hardhome. It's dangerous that every human killed by these creatures could become a fighter for the enemy. Beyond that terrifying reveal, it was the long look shared between the Night's King and Jon Snow that sent many fans theorizing. Could that lingering shot be proof there's a connection between these two characters? Could the Night's King have plans for Jon Snow? Sadly, those answers are going to have to wait for future seasons of Game of Thrones because this storyline is unique to the show. Though the Night's King is a character in George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire books, he's someone from old bedtime stories that Old Nan told to Bran. In the books, the Night's King was an early Lord Commander of the Night's Watch from the Age of Legends. Old Nan called him a warrior who knew no fear, which was his downfall, for all men must know fear. The Night's King fell in love with a woman described as having skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars, and her skin was as cold as ice, which obviously sounds a bit like a White Walker. He declared himself king and made her his queen. Together they held a terrible rule for 13 years and made sacrifices to the White Walkers. It was an alliance between House Stark and the first wildling king beyond the wall that finally defeated them. After learning the show's lead White Walker was also called the Night's King, some fans speculated that these characters might be one and the same. But George R.R. Martin put that theory to rest quickly, explaining the Night's King is a legendary figure akin to Lan the Clever and Brandon the Builder, and no more likely to have survived to the present day than they have. That's not to say that the show's version of the Night's King isn't similar to a character Martin will introduce in his forthcoming books. Even if he doesn't, the Night's King is clearly significant on Game of Thrones. Some fans are speculating that the Night's King could be looking to turn Jon Snow into a White Walker like he did the baby. The Night's Watch killed Jon at the end of Season 5, and since almost no one believes he'll actually stay dead, one theory is that the Night's King will reanimate the Lord Commander and recruit him as one of his lieutenants. That theory is looking less and less likely considering Kit Harington was spotted on Game of Thrones set in Belfast looking decidedly unlike a White Walker. Still, that look shared between him and the Night's King clearly is foreshadowing for something. Since so little is known about the Night's King and White Walkers, it's hard to draw any firm conclusions about what threat they may or may not pose to Westeros. But perhaps that is the biggest lesson to take away: don't draw any conclusions. Nothing in Game of Thrones is black and white. That means even the show's Night's King might not be the villain he seems to be. We'll be exploring more Game of Thrones mysteries in the coming weeks. Voting is still open. You can vote for your favorite unsolved Game of Thrones mystery right now on IGN. We'll tackle the most popular theories first. And for more on Game of Thrones, keep a close eye on IGN.